Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to your daily slop. Today we're gonna react to a video of Blaire White, where she is talking about the bell curve, as well as the tent that appears in the graphs of transsexually identifying individuals.
Just believe in the truth, and I believe the truth matters. And so if you're ever vindicated when you were right, especially when you were fighting against a sea of demons, ogres, and big backs who were threatening your life and hating you for years and saying horrific things about you because you had the audacity to speak the truth, I believe you deserve a quick moment to just be like, told you so.
It's rather unfortunate indeed to be like in the same category as those individuals. Yeah, that is who we are associated with. But honestly, I don't think you have much right to complain if you don't even train your female voice. Honestly, I'm kind of shocked to see what society has become. And just like with vegetarianism, I was trans before it was like quote unquote popular. But if that's gonna be your whole identity, you're quite poor. Doesn't matter how much money you get. You can be dirt poor, yet the soil can be rich. Yet the seed of wisdom doesn't have to sprout until it gets the right amount of sunlight and sunshine. And I understand that it can be quite difficult in the environment we have nowadays, but please, it's your physical entity, you only have one, and I think it's very important that you make this life count. I am quite spiritual myself, I believe in the journey of the soul. And I also believe that Jesus was one who was like reaching for these spiritual entities. I don't care if that makes me a lol cow. Nikola Tesla would have been a lol cow in this modern era. And there would have been plenty of sacred cows who were also lol cows if the media didn't have their back at every step. It's all about like what streams down. Nowadays there's a lot of competition unless you directly indoctrinate individuals through the education system, which obviously means you need to have the law on your side or keep people ignorant. In the past, it was a lot easier to keep the populace under control, not only because of organized religions, but think back of the eras next to this. When radio started developing, when TV started developing, you only had a few channels and they all echoed the same sentiment. Why? Because of the culture was homogeneous at the time. Religion married the state, yada yada yada. What made the first YouTubers blow up despite of them being amateur quality? Well, first of all, there was a hole in the market. They were there at the right place at the right time. Okay, that's enough of my bullshit philosophical ramblings. What I was trying to get at was people want to be part of a group. People want to be part of something.
Trans has absolutely become a trend. Why are fewer young people identifying as trans? This is, there's a lot of articles coming out this week. You may have seen these sorts of headlines.
It kind of feels like communism. People like to get behind the idea because it's something new and exquisite and they don't really know what it entails. But as soon as they start to learn more about it and hypothetical negative connotations it's attached to, then suddenly poof, people leave, people abandon the idea. But there's more to this. There's a lot more to this, I believe. I personally believe that it's also something about suppressed emotional urges. People feeling forced to perform in some sort of stigmatized gender role. There's also something out there called autogenophilia, which means that people get off to the idea and the fact of dressing in clothes of the opposite sex. Honestly, I don't mind walking around like Hugh Jackman myself. I mean, I used to be emo as well, and it's really trivial.
Saw it coming because we saw it coming, but a surprising shift is taking place in the gender and sexual identities of young Americans. The Center for Heterodox Social Science says that since 2023, both trans and queer identification have dropped sharply within Gen Z.
I mean, with the representation we got, that makes a lot of sense. What also makes a lot of sense is that girls like us turn other people queer. Freaking chair torture ASMR.
Between the end of 2019 and 2020, I wonder what happened then. Nothing much, right? There is this huge spike and it starts going up, up, up all the way until you get to 2023, which definitely, according to my own just recollection, did feel like it peaked in 2023. This graph feels right because it just matches my experience and what I've seen as someone who covers this obviously a lot. So in 23, almost 10%. of young people in schools were identifying as trans or non-binary.
I'm really astonished by those numbers, and I doubt that's organic. Also, my apologies for using such a long snippet of the video. But anyways, I'm gonna show you a clip right now, and you're gonna tell me what would happen if a white straight dude would have done this. Does that sound like a fun game to you? Well, I think it is fun. Write down in the comments down below.
Hey Nazis, can you set up somewhere where I can avoid you easily?
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
Nah, you Nazi. Watch your neck.
Thanks.
So that obviously was a reference to the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which is just like inhumane, disgusting, and I really wonder what would have happened if that was a straight dude saying that. Anyways, within this world we have many worlds, and within many worlds we have many visions. Sorry for like the hysterical gameplay in the background, by the way. Kinda sounds like my ex-schoolmates, or like mates, colleagues I would probably refer to them as. And I tried this education twice, once in 2017 and once later in 2022. And the difference between generations, it was insane. And these people, like the first time I tried that education, it was already insane because like people argued pro universal income. Yeah, that's a great way to have the entire third world on your doorstep. Great way to eradicate all sorts of human rights that we have here. But at least they were still making an argument. They were like, why you think this, why you think that, instead of like, no, it's not like that. Shut the fuck up. No, it's not true that trans people have it easier. Well, that really depends on the environment you're in. I swear they at least have it easier than the average sub-7 male. At least if their brain capacity is average as well. I could have jumped into bed with many random dudes. I could have had over a dozen boyfriends. And yes, who cares? Most of them would have been black and would have like stalked me and molested me beforehand. But I could have had them. My luck is that I'm so tall. I would have beaten the shit out of them.
Now, I have a lot of empathy for Gen Z.
Yes, and millions look up to heroes they never met. Okay, allow me to give some context actually, because that might not be something you understand about me. I could have been a very simple-minded fool. Case in point, however, I used the internet to enlighten myself. It's all about searching in the right places, really. People get stuck in their comfort zone, they take the easy route, parents raise their kids with iPhones, iPads. But, you know, I understand where Blaire is coming from. I was literally the last generation not raised with an iPad. Actually, technology followed me and it was already in high school. I was already told there to get an iPad. It's not like there's too much wrong with that, but it's all about finding a balance. You can be like, music is haram, but there's plenty of enough songs, check mine out by the way, that aren't about drugs, hoes and bitches, but specifically designed for spiritual enlightenment.
Well, first of all, let's get to the positive. It is now dipping all the way down. 2025, it's nearly half, but it's only to about what it was in 2021. So still some work to do. However, I have a lot of empathy for Gen Z, like I was about to say. This is a generation that was denied things like prom, denied graduations, really important milestones in becoming a young adult.
Well, I guess you're right about that. I suppose I should just put aside that I've always been a lone wolf. And, as always, try to look at the bigger picture. Back in the past, it was very important to be part of the gang, to be part of the group, of the colony of humans. Specifically before we had any of the technologies we have today, or housing. And there were only these forests with these wild animals that we've already eradicated, but they also eradicated each other. Within these times, it was very important to have a group to rely upon. Otherwise you would be out there and be torn to shreds. So another aspect is that if the group did something, or like the leader did something, or someone who seemed cool, because let's be honest, humans always lived in hierarchies, and of course you also had tribes fighting each other, usually killing the men and taking the women as slaves. Or at least in certain cultures that's more prominent than in others. Some call it compassion, others call it psychological trauma for life.
And so I always knew like it would have to be turned around, this and many other things that were afflicting Gen Z. The way that a pandemic turned people trans needs to be studied.
Okay, but here's my psychological assessment. So people become more easy to influence during traumatic events. because they want to be spared. And within our nature, the entities we fight aren't machines, they are just mere humans. Now take this with a grain of salt, but I truly believe that DNA is linked to memory. As in, within our DNA there are memories of our ancestors before they birthed us.
Actually see and compare how the story may or may not being spun in a certain direction. Like this story that just broke. Trump DOJ is reportedly looking at ways to ban transgender Americans from owning guns. So let's compare the headlines. From The Intercept, which is left-leaning, Trump's DOJ wants to deprive trans people of the right to self-defense. And then the Free Press, which is right-leaning, gun rights group slams DOJ for considering gun ban on transgender people. So
Okay, excellent, because honestly I'm quite pro Second Amendment and I think that all should be able to defend himself. Unfortunately, I did notice that whatever the media elevates is designed to create more of a smokescreen so we can be more divided. It's easier for them to rule that way. For example, take the whole Russia collusion thing. There were legitimate individuals out there who were defending Trump and they were all accused of being Russian bots. Why? Because there was a vicious lie coming from CNN. It's literally documented by a whistleblower who at the time was working for Project Veritas. Actually, genius. Thank you very much, James O'Keefe. You are a blessing to humanity. We had this news reporter named Van Jones who literally coughed up the fact that they were lying about it. It was a big nothing burger, and we already had with the MH17, which unfortunately cost hundreds of my people their lives. That there was already some conflict between Ukraine and Russia. And what did Russia accuse Europe of? For putting someone in office who was like pushing the ideology of democracy, which doesn't always work when you live in idiocracy. It just kind of reminded me of the story of Patrice Lumumba, who once upon a time won the election in the Congo very fairly, with 90% of the votes, but then got assassinated by America and Brussels, which is a shame, and it only shows that this wasn't the first time they tried installing a puppet regime. Did you know Ukraine used to be one of the most corrupt countries in the EU? Oh, sorry. Also, when Putin was young, that was still part of the USSR, so I kind of like understand somewhere. I'm not pro-war, but this just seems more to me like something to thin out the population. And if Europe wins, it's probably gonna be turned into a crap hole, with the third world all over it. Wait, what was I talking about again? Oh yeah, transgenders and the curveball within like the stats.
nonsensical rules that they knew somewhere deep down in their like subconscious didn't make any sense, but were so scared and just did it anyways. It was that hypnosis.
Let me give a translation there. It's either strange, weird-ass porn that people fell for and started watching because they didn't have jack shit to do being locked up. But we were also fighting an enemy we didn't know. And that's terrifying because we couldn't assess the danger levels. However, I do remember this video floating around of Bill Gates. And I remember it being very particular, but to be enlightened of it, I would need to have someone comment about it. Because I'm too stupid to use Google.
It was that mass formation psychosis. It was the fact that according to neuroscience, this is science, when a trauma occurs in someone's life, their suggestibility skyrockets. So when something terrible happens, which is this pandemic and this, for me, it was less about the pandemic being scary and more about that mass formation psychosis, like I said, people's behavior, the way people were becoming insane. That was what scared me. I actually had a few breakdowns about it during it. I remember going one time to the Grove in LA and seeing like a baby in a stroller with a mask on, and I just lost it.
Yes, people are closer to animals than we like to admit. Anyways, I remember a video where people were like clinging pants daily, every single person on the block. Kind of like terrifying. Maybe they were just desperate and were like, you know what, we're gonna test daily if people are still alive or whatnot. Because, like, of course, individuals were terrified. So, what's the most reasonable set of actions? I know, we'll just act like animals. No one will mess with us then. No one will steal our toilet paper.
You gotta remember, there's a lot of people who never questioned who they were in their life. A lot of y'all are walking around, no idea who you are. A lot of y'all are walking around, never questioned why you do the certain things that you do. And for the first time, people had that space and that like time to do that. And they're getting fed with, trans content on TikTok.
Excellent assessment, Mrs. White. I couldn't have said it better myself. Well, actually, I probably could have, but then they would have called me the Blaire White from Timo.
Social contagion. 1 + 1 = 2. So you have this gap in people where they're just looking for answers because the world outside of their four walls of their home is no longer making sense.
I mean, it could cause many things. A sense of dread, a sense of meaninglessness, perhaps even nihilism. You know what? It's okay to sometimes question who you are. But honestly, the burning pain and suffering I got from like being in my own entity, that's uncomparable. If you would have like been trans, you would have probably known that a lot earlier. And maybe it's righteous if you look beyond like that whole gender subject. Maybe look at your own destiny, a meaning you can give to the world, something you can assert yourself to. And I know it's tough. I know it's difficult. We are born into a game of Monopoly and the pieces are already set. And we're just like landing on hotel after hotel if we're not lucky. But if you use those pains to grow and expand your horizon, then I have no doubt that you'll do the right thing for those around you.
You know what I mean? I feel like the writing was on the wall a little bit. And mind you, I'm coming here telling you this as a transsexual myself. So
Same.
when someone says trans is a trend, does that mean that every single person who is trans is following the trend? Obviously not, especially if you transitioned before the trend.
Yeah, and so did I. People say it's all like based on social conditioning, who you'll become. But no one socially conditioned me to become a vegetarian. First of all, my parents are hardcore meat eaters. Second of all, there was even this so-called left-wing dude who actually stole from the disenfranchised. Yeah, that's very left-wing of you. Hashtag sarcasm. And this dude was so proud of himself because he ate barely anything but meat and tried to like give me quote-unquote therapy. If there's anything more toxic than a toxic vegan, it's a toxic meat eater. Sorry about that, but if you don't insult people's intelligence, they'll always treat you like you're mentally 6 years old. Or at least that's from my personal experience. Honestly, it's a really bad idea to put someone in a political square. The square isn't sufficient enough to place people. So many variables, you can't just like water it down like that. Besides, my observations about American politics have led me to believe that both left and right are slowly changing depending on like who's in office, who's electable.
I'm not seeing the same level of like detransitioners and people who transitioned before the trend as I am after. And a lot of these people are children, a lot of these people are babies.
Oh, no. Like maybe if like someone's been screaming since they were 6 and are 16 that they're like in the wrong body, sure. But like I've known plenty of like ladies who didn't have a man and had a son and feminized the dude. What I have great objection to is manipulating a body with operations when it's still in development. Unless it's for like a kidney transplant or something, or a heart transplant because they're dying. I'm gonna skip the part where Blaire talks about little girls who want their boobies back sewn on. Don't tell me that those people could have ever consented. Because it sounds to me like they're barely aware of like their life, their physical being, and how it can be like mended and bended, or like what can't happen.
That's a permanent body modification under the best circumstances. So you want to move aside all the complications, all the things you can't do, the sterilization, not being able to feed your kids. You can even set that aside. Just the permanent body modification. I mean, you have to be so demented to believe
why do
that
half
a
these
child
people
fully
look like
understands. I heard a few conversations.
Okay, no offense, but why do half these people look like they do the trans community a favor if they wore paper bags over their heads?
About, well, if the child fully understands, they don't because they're children.
But see, the thing is, though, some adults don't even understand what they want to do.
Exactly. So how can a child?
Get rid of that
But
nose
see, children,
piercing.
wait a minute, let's not just...
That would, of course, mean that we are actually living in a reality where it's the people criticizing the trans movement causing harm and not the people within the movement causing harm, right? See, the people outside the movement aren't actually cutting the minors' breasts off. The people outside of that movement aren't actually sterilizing children. So the harm's coming from within. The call is coming from within.
Yes, but unfortunately, we have to suffer through the issue of guilt by association. Not you, Blaire. You already built a reputation for yourself. I'm proud of you. Anyways, I'm pretty sure that's about it. I am quite done, because I want you to have something to watch if you check out that video. And my commentary is just a bonus, because it doesn't matter how much effort I put into my projects. For some reason, if I associate myself with more familiar individuals, then I obviously will get more attention. Anyways, if you made it this far, I think I deserve your sub. Thank you very much.